Welcome everyone, Costin here with a discussion about content creators for Total War, Warhammer 3, or Total War in general, but this video is certainly going to be focused on the situation for Warhammer 3. Creative Assembly has shut down the content creator program, and there are people who are celebrating. There are people who are saying things like, the sellouts are locked out. I'm not quite sure some people realize exactly what's going to happen with this, but if you believe that Creative Assembly is not going to have any relation going forward with content creators, in particular those that you would accuse of being sellouts, I think you're mistaken in that particular belief, to be quite honest. In fact, quite the opposite. Creative Assembly shutting down the program and restricting it, which is what they're likely going to do going forward, may mean, though I don't know for certain, but it may mean that the people they're going to allow in the future version of the content creator program, because there will be a future version, the leak was very clear on that subject, but the people they're going to allow might just be the people that you accuse, that people accuse on the internet of being sellouts. So it's always annoying being a content creator from this perspective. Like right now, in the Total War community, the Total War fan base, but just the Total War community, there are people that believe a lot of content creators are sellouts, that we've been selling ourselves out to Creative Assembly to promote their games. Then there's people who blame us for the poor situation for Shadows of Change and Total War Pharaoh. That we caused the death of Total War Pharaoh and Shadows of Change because we told people en masse not to buy them. Both of those perspectives are, to put it plainly, incredibly wrong. There's some truth to it, yes, but the underlying assumptions are fairly mistaken. Let's consider Total War Pharaoh. Let's talk about the people who believe that, oh, content creators kill Total War Pharaoh and Shadows of Change. That is not the truth. The truth is that long before we started making videos, many of us started making videos in any way about Total War Pharaoh, Shadows of Change, maybe just some videos talking about like the announcement and all that, but long before any kind of like definitive opinion was published on YouTube or in other places, our viewerships, the Total War fan base, was up in arms against Creative Assembly. It was up in arms against Shadows of Change from day one when the price was revealed. It was up in arms against Total War Pharaoh when it was very clear from day one to anyone that bothered that Total War Pharaoh was going to be a Troy clone. And that was very, very clear. No one doubted that. And a lot of people disliked that because Troy is not a popular game. It performed really poorly. Very few people played Troy, even though a significant number of people did try it out for a couple hours and then quit playing it after like half an hour, something like that. A lot of people just did hate Troy. That's just the simple reality of it. So for Creative Assembly and CA Sophia to make a game based on Troy in the worst mode of Troy, the historical mode, well, that was always going to be a disaster. So I was very skeptical about that. A lot of us were skeptical. And that's where you get the polls that content creators, including myself, did. I honestly just wanted to know what people felt. Like, I wanted to know if Total War Pharaoh was going to be worth covering. I did cover it. I made plenty of videos on that. But I always viewed it as a lost cause, so to speak, with respect to it. The reason I viewed it as a lost cause is because I knew that was not going to do well. Because Troy had not done well. Now, I actually like Troy in a lot of ways, at least on the campaign level, not the battles. The battles are terrible. But I think Total War Pharaoh is just significantly worse as a game. It has a worse campaign situation, a worse economy, and the battles themselves are actually far less interesting than even the battles of Troy. So yeah, that game was not going to do well. To blame content creators for that is plainly ridiculous. To accuse content creators of being sellouts because we covered Pharaoh. Yeah, some of us covered Pharaoh. We made videos on it. It's hilarious when you get accused of being a sellout for Creative Assembly when you're covering Pharaoh, even though the most popular and biggest video you did on Pharaoh, in my case, was a review slamming Pharaoh as the worst Total War release in years, because it is the worst Total War release in years. But that's the frustration. That's the reason I'm making this video. It is that nonsense. Actually, it's also a comment I got recently from someone accusing me, like, oh, you had all these links for the game in your videos. I'm like, I think I've never linked a game on my channel, or a store, or a link to buy a game on my channel in my entire channel's history, with some exceptions. And I've never done it for Total War, that's for damn certain. I did it for Last Train Home, that came out recently, but that is just the exception. Like, maybe I've done it like 3-4 times in my entire channel's history, and I've been doing this for over a decade. Yeah, I'm totally selling myself out for these gaming companies. That's absolutely ridiculous. Some people do use affiliate links and referral links and all that kind of stuff. Absolutely. But if you think a referral link or anything like that means that someone can't be negative about the game, you're fairly mistaken. Considering Mandalore Gaming, who makes reviews on games, he's perfectly willing to criticize a lot of games very thoroughly, even if he does ultimately provide a link. And he has covered a lot of games where he has provided links, and he didn't recommend them. That's simply a reality for that situation. For the kind of games he does cover. I kind of wish he would cover Warhammer 3 Immortal Empires, because he does have a powerful voice. He just doesn't want to, because he doesn't think, like, from what I've understood, he doesn't want to because he doesn't think it's worth it at the moment. He did leave a negative review on Steam for Shadows of Change, so make of that what you will. But let's talk about the dynamic we deal with as content creators on YouTube, because that dynamic is key to understanding how things work. There's this mistaken assumption that a lot of content creators are just selling themselves out to gaming companies. That's not how we make money. Like, ultimately, and I don't think anyone should be ashamed of saying this, ultimately as content creators, we're interested in one thing: getting views, getting ad revenue, doing well on our channels. We don't put blood, sweat, and tears into this work, because it is a lot of work to have a successful channel. We don't put blood and sweat and tears to just get a couple hundred views on a video. That's, in a lot of ways, a waste of time. I've done it myself for certain games that I enjoyed, but for the most part, it can be considered a significant waste of time if you're doing that. We want it to be worthwhile. So ultimately, what content creators do, what motivates content creators, is making content that people want to watch. Not the content that companies want us to make, not the content that necessarily sells the most amount of copies of Total War, but the content that is going to get the most views for us. We are slaves to the algorithm above everything else. And we're also slaves to our viewer bases, if you will. We're reliant on people. The people we answer to is not like some gaming company or one or another. Personally, I've covered Total War extensively over the last year. Before that, I covered World of Warcraft. I've never considered at any point what I care about Creative Assembly, and I've met very few content creators that care a lot. Like, sure, you don't want to piss them off needlessly. That's something that some people don't understand. I'm looking at the Volant crowd in particular here. You don't want to needlessly annoy these companies, but that doesn't mean you don't speak out. Consider the fact that two of the biggest content creators, like the biggest content creator for Total War, is Legend. Legend has been very clear on his criticism of Creative Assembly. For World of Warcraft, Asmongold has been very clear on his criticism of Blizzard. That is simply a reality. Now, there's a difference between Blizzard and Creative Assembly in the sense that Creative Assembly is not quite as receptive to criticism, but Legend is the biggest content creator because he's willing to speak freely about it. Being a sellout is not necessarily a benefit for you as a content creator, because it can help you, sure. It can open some doors, help you with networking, I suppose. But ultimately, if you want to have a huge channel, if you want to do very well financially as a content creator, you need to make content that people are interested in watching. That is a reality. And this is where I have to talk about the problem that exists in a lot of fan bases, not just the Total War fan base, though certainly the whole Total War fan base has been one of the worst examples. Not the Warhammer fan base, interesting enough. Like, the Warhammer fan base is like of the perspective, we slam Games Workshop every day, every single night for the crap they do when they do crap. We still love their game. Imagine being critical about something you like. Oh yeah, imagine. Because you want it to be better, you want it to be improved. That's the reason I'm very critical of the things I like a lot. Because I do want better. Like, people accuse me of hating Warhammer 3. I don't hate Warhammer 3. I think it's one of the best Total War games that Creative Assembly has made in years. But a lot of my videos, oh, you're just being too negative. Yeah, there are issues in this game. I'm going to talk about those issues. Because I care about the game and I would like it to be better. That's simply how I view things. But here's the problem. There are some people that accuse you of being a sellout because you're not aggressive enough and not hyperventilating when you're criticizing a company. Then there's people that criticize you because you dare criticize a company. There were people, like on a video that Great Book of Grudges made recently, where there were some people that were accusing, like, oh, content creators are to blame for the current situation because we got pissed off with Creative Assembly because for basically the price of a Starbucks or pocket change. Well, it clearly wasn't the price, the way that people viewed things. It clearly wasn't perceived as just being pocket change by a significant portion of the community. The community, or large portions of the community, have turned against Creative Assembly for bloody good reason. Because ultimately, people don't like being ripped off. And that's exactly what Creative Assembly was doing with Shadows of Change and with Total War Pharaoh. They were both egregious examples of trying to nickel and dime your consumer base. And their apology, while it might be a good first step, is nothing more than just an apology. We need to see action. And let's just say that I've really soured on Creative Assembly and their apology when they issued that apology and then they shut down the content creator program. Because the problem with that is, with the content creator program, well, I'll just give you an example. Which has a change. Under the content creator program that has existed, I made a bunch of videos heavily criticizing Creative Assembly and highlighting the issue. I wouldn't necessarily claim credit for it, but I certainly highlighted the issue of the cafe and caravans being broken pre-launch, and they were fixed pre-launch because of that. And some people say, oh, they only fixed something that you could exploit. I don't think people realize just how broken that was. Like, yes, having power can be a bad thing when it's that broken. Like, it just would have made the entire campaign irrelevant because you wouldn't have had to bother with money at all during the course of that campaign with the broken caravan. So I'm glad Creative Assembly fixed it. I wish they would have fixed many other issues about Shadows of Change, and I highlighted those as well, but some things tend to be ignored. I also made it very clear what I thought about the lack of key sleeve changes. Well, I didn't make that clear until I did the review, but I did make a video long before that review where I went over the changes or lack of changes that Kislev had received with Shadows of Change. Basically, Kislev got nothing. One of the most broken and weak races in the game that has been in a pretty bad state since the launch of Warhammer 3 got squat. And yes, I was pretty angry about that. Very angry. In fact, I kind of wish I had recorded my initial impression because let's just say it would have been biblical if I had made a video on that subject. But I didn't. I respected the embargo. Respecting the rules, when you basically have a contract, so to speak, not really a contract, but an agreement with a party, you kind of want to stick by agreement. I have not violated embargoes, and nor do I intend to. I am fine with embargoes. That's okay. As long as I'm able to speak freely about the subject, even if I can only review it properly one day before launch, I am fine with that. Now, you can make the argument that it shouldn't just be a day, it should be a week, maybe a couple days, so people can get an informed opinion, all that. But videos on YouTube have a 1-2 day lifespan anyway, so does it really matter all that much? Like, I make a video just one day before launch, and if it's negative and other content creators also make videos of similar nature, and yeah, probably that game is not necessarily going to do very well. But you then get criticized by people for being a sellout, and at the same time, on the same video, you get criticized by people because you're too negative. It blows away my mind. Here's another thing, though. Here's something I want to point out, and a story that happened to me with World of Warcraft specifically. I focused heavily on World of Warcraft on Burning Crusade Classic. I had the huge knowledge base, I had been a guild leader for Burning Crusade, I had been a main tank, raid leader, all that. I led 34 people for over 7 months through the raiding content, which is not something many content creators can claim. There are obviously people that have done much more than I have, but how many of those were making content at the time? Not really that many. So I actually kind of knew what I was talking about. And I made videos on this, like Paladin Tanking Guide, various raid guides, all that, or raid setup guides, all that kind of stuff, right? I got criticized a lot for saying rogues were going to be useless in TBC. Lo and behold, they were. Shockingly enough, maybe the guy who's actually spent a lot of time, 40-hour weeks running a guild might actually have a fucking clue what they're talking about. But no, you're saying something that people don't want to hear. That's a really annoying thing. We're in a society nowadays on social media where people don't care about critical opinions. They just want to live in their echo chambers. They just want to hear. And telling an entire class, telling people that are playing a particular class that that class is not going to be needed, yeah, that kind of pisses people off. I can understand why, but this also happens to be the truth. Oh, some people are smartasses and think, oh, you were just so wrong. And I'm like, I was only wrong about one particular class, and the reason I was wrong is because trash ended up being more important than raid bosses for the top tier raids. And that was Warrior versus Hunter. That's the only thing I got wrong. Everything else, in terms of raid setups, class importance, which classes would be used, I was dead on the money for what I stated. Tanking, healing, doesn't freaking matter, by the way. But it didn't matter. But in the eyes of a lot of people, it didn't matter. And it also pissed off a lot of people when I was being very critical of decisions that Blizzard, and using that as an example, Blizzard was making with TBC Classic. Because what Blizzard did, I'll use that as an example, what Blizzard did is they split off portions of the game that had come out originally at the same time. They split it off. Now, I knew why they were doing it. Everyone knew why they were doing it. If you didn't realize it, I'll just say it at once. They wanted to pad the length of the game out, and that was in their justification. The justification was, oh, it would have been too much content. And a lot of content creators ran with that. Worse, a lot of people ran with that. Yes, I'm not joking on this. A lot of players that play TBC Classic before the launch of TBC Classic agreed with that stupid sentiment. And you know what happened to me for daring to speak the truth as someone who had a lot more experience on this subject than quite a few other people? You know what happened? I got blacklisted, if you will. Not from Blizzard, no. I really didn't interact with Blizzard. I got the beta key because of Josh Colbert from the Content the Classic podcast. No, I didn't get blacklisted by that. I got blacklisted by other content creators because their fan bases did not want to listen to me because I was being too negative. It didn't matter that in the end I was right. The consequences were still there. Being right and still ending up losing your viewership and getting blackballed by content creators who you had spent quite a lot of time with feels like crap. So if you're wondering why there's so many content creators that are quote-unquote sellouts or making positive content for a video, for a video game they're covering, the simple explanation for that situation is this. People don't want critical thought. They want their echo chambers. And in particular, when you're covering a game, you want to make content for the people playing that game actively. Not people who are pissed off at the company and might not be playing that game, but no, people who are active. At this moment, with Warhammer 3, it might surprise some people to know, but there's around 20,000 active users. The user base, despite everything that has happened over the last couple of months, the user base for Warhammer 3 is not collapsing. I know it's shocking to hear that, but that's a reality. So if you're a content creator, are you going to make videos for the people who are no longer playing the game, or are you going to make videos for the people playing the game? That's the reality. So that's why you get this situation where content creators don't speak something negative until the community as a whole decides to turn against a company or against a product or a decision for a product. Because if they dare do so, they're going to end up being slammed on the ground. They're going to lose their viewership. They're going to be blackballed, as has happened, not just to myself, but for other creators as well in various situations. They're going to be blackballed. They're going to be hated because they went against the Reddit meta, as I'd call it. And will it be worth it? No. That's why you get content creators doing that, being sellouts or saying only positive things about the game. But also I want to point this out. Not every content creator has to be a critic. There's no universal set of principles or guidelines for what a content creator has to be. Some people only just want to play a game. Maybe they enjoy it when an overwhelming number of people hate it. Maybe they're fine with what the company is doing. That's the reality of what people have to accept. And if every incentive when you're covering a game is to follow follow the opinion, the overwhelming opinion, or the Reddit meta, as I call it, if every incentive is for that, don't be surprised if the largest share of content creators are those kind of people. The reason those kind of people rise to the top and get the biggest viewerships and fan bases, with some exceptions like Legend of Total War, the reason they get so big and large is because people don't want to watch other types of content. Yes. The people to blame on this are not the gaming companies. Yes, the gaming companies do view YouTubers and content creators as extended marketing. They have a budget for this even. Absolutely. That doesn't mean content creators necessarily care about that. Some do, some don't. But what we all universally care about is if people are going to watch our videos. And that's something that's not dictated by what companies want us to do. That's dictated by what fans of a particular game or the community for a particular game wants to see. If they want to see negative content slamming a company at one particular point, they're going to get that. You're going to see people change their perspective on that because that's what's going to pay off. Because you then get slammed for not being critical when everyone is being critical. If they only want to hear good things, that's what they're going to do. That's what's going to happen. That's how you get these kind of situations. That's what I want to highlight. You can blame Creative Assembly all you want, but you know what? I'm personally just going to say out loud, the reason Total War is in the current state that it is because people tolerated a lot of the shit and embraced a lot of things. Do you know how many people have accepted the blood pack over the years? How many people have defended it till their last breath? Because it's okay for Creative Assembly to sell us blood in Total War on the basis that it's affecting their ESRB ratings. What they're really doing there, by the way, what Creative Assembly is really doing there is they're trying to engage in predatory business practices where they're trying to get children to play their games, even though there's a bunch of screwed up things in a game like Total War Warhammer. Now, I don't care either way. Like, I grew up playing Doom. A lot of people in my generation grew up playing Doom in the 90s. We didn't end up being messed up. Oh, you know, there was this one shooting. Of the millions of people that played Doom, those guys were the outliers, the most extreme of the outliers. And you think a bit of blood changes how kids get formed by these games? There's a lot more fucked up shit in these games than blood, suffice to say. That is where I stand on that subject. It's always been terrible business practices. Or the Warriors of Chaos Day 1 DLC situation. Yeah, I made a video back then. Do you know what my like to dislike ratio for that video was? 10 to 1. 10 to 1 dislikes to likes when I made a video back in the day slamming Creative Assembly for releasing Day 1 DLC for Warhammer 1. Yeah, I took the video down in part because of that, in part because of, well, I'm not necessarily the kind of person, I'm not necessarily happy with my rage videos, as you can tell. Yes, I am a hothead. What can I say? I guess I have that in common with Legend of Total War. Now, you might ask, okay, you've said all of this, Costin. What about someone like Volan, someone like Legend of Total War? What about their situation? Well, Legend got blackballed because he got into arguments with Creative Assembly over a number of issues. Friends of Britannia, the launch of Warhammer 3, where he got really pissed off because he gave a lot of feedback and it was ignored. I agree with Legend on a lot of issues, by the way. But you also got, but the straw that broke the camel's back was the fact that he defended Voland. And Voland has pissed off a lot of people. Now, I'm not going to give my opinion on Voland. I don't have a good opinion on him. But suffice to say, he's pissed off an enormous number of people within Creative Assembly. He's pissed off a lot of content creators. So that was the straw that broke the camel's back between his relationship with Creative Assembly. That's all I had to say. Might have gotten a bit carried away over here, but I did want to talk about this because it is infuriating to spend a lot of time, effort, and energy trying to cover a game, spending thousands of hours playing a game, and then getting attacked on all sides. And that's the situation a lot of content creators have to deal with at this point in time. Are there people who will only say nice things about the company? Yes, there are. Are there people who believe that the best thing they can do for their career, if you will, on YouTube is to sell themselves out for these companies? Yes, there are. That's true. But that's because the incentives that exist for them from people watching videos push them in that direction. If you're covering a game, you want the people playing that game to watch the videos, not the people who are pissed off at that game and may have quit that series. That's a fundamental problem, right? As long as people are willing to tolerate Creative Assembly's crap, that's what's going to happen. Or paradoxes. Costin signing out.